This happened a few winters ago. I had just finalized my divorce about 6 months earlier, and to put it lightly, I needed a reset. Christina, my girlfriend at the time, suggested we take a trip somewhere quiet, something different from the chaos I'd been dealing with. We found a rental on a lake in upstate New York, and I booked it for a week without much thought. The place was exactly what I was looking for. A modern but cozy house positioned right on the lake, surrounded by woods, with only a handful of other properties scattered along the shoreline. Most of them were empty. It wasn't exactly peak season for lakefront living. I welcomed that though. I really just wanted to be as far from civilization as possible. The host wasn't going to be there, but he gave us some detailed instructions on where to find the keys, some stuff about the house, all the standard Airbnb stuff. We arrived in the morning, and when we got there was a small package sitting on the front steps waiting for us. There was no return address, just a little handwritten note that said, "Enjoy your stay, make sure to stay warm." That part was kind of cute. But there was something else in the package. A tiny box of matches. We figured it was some kind of welcome gift. A weird one, but harmless enough. Christina laughed and made a joke about how the upstate people have always been a little odd, and that was that. The next 2 days were exactly what we wanted. Long hikes through the snow, hot drinks by the fireplace, total peace and quiet. Oh yeah, I should probably mention that the snow had been steadily falling since we arrived. Not quite a blizzard because there wasn't that much wind or fog, but there was enough snow to make the landscape feel untouched. It was perfect. I think it's a good time to describe the layout of the house, at least somewhat. The master bedroom where we slept was on the second floor. It had these massive windows across from the bed that overlooked the lake. The roof, or at least the windows, must have been pretty thin because we could hear the patter of snowflakes from inside, which was a really nice touch. There was also a skylight in there, so we could fall asleep to the beautiful sky and snow. Sometime after midnight on the third night, I woke up to a sound. It was barely audible over the sound of the wind and the snow. The first thing I noticed was actually the storm. The snowfall had gotten considerably heavier since I had fallen asleep, and the outdoors was starting to resemble more of a blizzard. I shifted my focus back to the sound and realized why it stuck out. It sounded man-made, almost mechanical, unlike the natural sounds you'd expect to hear out in the wilderness. I quietly got out of bed, careful not to wake up Christina, and I made my way across the room. I looked out the window and saw the last thing I expected to see. A snowmobile. It was moving slowly across the ice. I know it's not the most abnormal thing. People drive snowmobiles on frozen lakes all the time. But I was just so confused given how late it was. Like I said, the snow was falling more heavily now, so visibility wasn't great, but I could still make out the shape. The driver was moving cautiously, like they weren't completely sure about the ice. And then they just stopped entirely. I watched as the person climbed off and started waving their hands like they were in distress. It looked like they were shouting, but I couldn't make out what they were saying. To my horror, I realized that they were facing in the direction of our house. Did they know we were there? It was impossible. Either way, it looked like they needed help. So I woke Christina and told her what was happening. Then I got dressed, went downstairs, and stepped outside onto the deck. It was freezing, even with the layers I was wearing. As soon as I opened the door, I got hit with another surprise. The person on the ice was a woman. I could tell because she was shouting for help, saying, "Thank God someone's there," and repeating that she lost her little boy somewhere in the snowstorm. It sounded like she was crying, or borderline hysterical. It wasn't a question of whether or not I'd help. If there was a child out there in that weather all alone, they weren't gonna last long. I laced my boots and made my way toward the lake, telling Christina to stay inside. As I approached the woman, I started to make out more details of her appearance. She was bundled up in a thick fur coat, and her hair was pulled back into a tight braid. The ice was completely solid. There wasn't even a chance of falling through. So I started to relax, knowing that it would have been impossible for that little boy to have fallen through. As I got closer, she started saying that he had run away from home and that she was looking for him. That statement gave me some pause. I had expected her to say something like he had fallen off her snowmobile and she hadn't noticed. And then I started to think about how ridiculous even that story was. How the hell do you not notice your own kid falling off a snowmobile? The adrenaline must have been clouding my judgment, because I hadn't even thought about that until right then. I was just about to ask her for more details when she said something that literally made me freeze. She asked me if I still got those matches, and I could tell she was smiling. For a split second, I had no idea what she was talking about, and then it all clicked at once. The matches, that package from the first day, the note. She had left it, not our host. Before I could react, she reached into her coat and pulled out a gun. She demanded my wallet and phone, and I gave them to her. I had no other choice. The whole interaction happened within the span of not even 30 seconds. Without another word, she climbed back onto the snowmobile and disappeared into the whiteout. As she was speeding away, I turned towards the house and ran as fast as I could on the ice, shouting for Christina to call the police the whole time. She was already on the phone with them when I finally made it back to the house. I locked the doors and paced the room, still shaking. I kept looking outside, half expecting to see that snowmobile circling back. The cops showed up about an hour later. By that point, the fresh snowfall had already covered any tracks that woman had left behind. Christina was hysterical, but I was mostly angry. I had come here for peace. There was hope, though. I couldn't think of a reliable way that woman had gotten her snowmobile onto the lake, so I expected the police to at least find the vehicle abandoned somewhere. Unfortunately, I was wrong. The police searched the area and found an old boat ramp on the far side of the lake. Their best guess was that she had come from there. I was furious and insisted they keep looking, but they told me the same thing I already knew. There wasn't much they could do. Even if she left something behind, they'd never find it in all the snow. With Christina's help, I tried tracking my phone, but by that point, it was already offline. The one good thing about the whole ordeal was that the Airbnb host refunded the entire trip. He sounded genuine on the phone and confirmed that he knew nothing about a welcome package, but something about the whole thing didn't sit right with me. How could that woman have possibly known we'd be staying there? And why go to such elaborate lengths just for a simple robbery? I couldn't help but think the host had something to do with it, but I had no proof. I brought it up with Airbnb, but they were about as helpful as you'd expect. I know I've always been a paranoid guy, but for the longest time after that, I couldn't help but feel that my ex-wife had something to do with it. It honestly makes me angry writing about this. I can just imagine her stupid face laughing at my expense. I've since come to terms with how unlikely that possibility is, but the whole thing still doesn't make any sense. Even now, I have no idea why someone would do all of that just for a wallet and phone, unless they were seriously messed up in the head and got some kind of sick pleasure out of it.